We all reach for that comforting dash of cinnamon, don't we? On our coffee, oatmeal. It's in so many baked things.
Oh, absolutely. It feels so natural almost.
Yeah. Well, harmless.
Exactly. Harmless. But have you ever thought maybe that innocent spice, especially when we talk about like concentrated forms, could it be doing more than just adding flavor?
That's precisely the really interesting question we're digging into today. We're going to look at some pretty compelling recent findings. They suggest cinnamon, particularly if you take quite a bit of it, might actually mess with how our bodies handle certain medications.
Okay, let's get into that. We've got some good sources here. First, there's this new study from the University of Mississippi, led by Shabana Khan.
Right, she's a principal scientist. And then there's another report that mentions the same study. It's in food chemistry, molecular sciences. That one has insights from Bill Gurley.
And to kind of round it out, we're also looking at an article from the Times of India. It highlights cinnamon, but also, other common kitchen things that might interact with prescriptions. Yeah, so our mission, really, for this deep dive is to understand these potential interactions better. Who might be most at risk? And, what are the key things you need to know so you can stay informed, stay healthy, but without getting totally overwhelmed by all the science talk.
Makes sense. Okay, let's dive in. What's the absolute core finding? What's making scientists look twice at cinnamon?
So the main thing, it revolves around these specific compounds in cinnamon. Cinnamaldehyde, that's a key one, and cinnamic acid.
Okay.
What the research shows is that these compounds can sort of switch on or activate certain enzymes in the liver. You can think of them like processing units. And these particular enzymes are the ones that break down and clear medications out of your system.
Oh, right. So the cinnamon compounds are basically telling the liver, hey, get rid of these drugs faster.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. And Shabana Khan from the study, she actually said, overconsumption of supplements could lead to a rapid clearance of the prescription medicine from the body.
And that could result in making the medicine less effective.
Wow. Okay, so that's not just theoretical.
No, it could have real effects for people relying on those meds. And Bill Gurley also chimed in, mentioning cinnamaldehyde specifically, its potential to activate these receptors and pose a risk for drug interactions.
Right. Now, this word overconsumption keeps coming up.
Yeah.
That sounds vague. What is that actually? Are we talking about like an extra teaspoon on my oatmeal?
Right.
Or is this really just about the supplements?
That's a really crucial question. And, well, the food chemistry study didn't pin down an exact amount, unfortunately. But what all the sources do stress is the big difference between, using cinnamon as a spice in cooking versus taking these highly concentrated forms, like the supplements, or even chewing on the bark itself.
Ah, okay. So the concentration is the key thing. A sprinkle versus a packed capsule is totally different.
Totally different. It's orders of magnitude, likely. And that actually leads us to another point. The type of cinnamon matters too.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that. There's more than one kind, right? That's right. The main worry, especially highlighted in the University of Mississippi research, is with cinnamon bark, and specifically Cassia cinnamon.
Cassia, that's a regular one we usually buy.
Yeah, typically the cheaper, more common one in grocery stores. It has much higher levels of cinnamaldehyde compared to the other main type, Ceylon cinnamon. That cinnamaldehyde, by the way, is largely responsible for that classic cinnamon smell and taste.
Okay, so Cassia, the common one, has more of this compound that might cause issues in high doses. What about Ceylon then?
Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes it's called true cinnamon, often comes from Sri Lanka. It generally has much, much lower levels of these compounds, including cinnamaldehyde. So in this context, it's usually seen as, well, maybe the safer bet if you were taking larger amounts.
Interesting.
And it's also worth mentioning the researchers pointed out that cinnamon oil, like in essential oils, wasn't their main focus or concern in this particular study.
Good to know. Okay, so quick recap. A bit of cassia in cooking, probably fine. But concentrated stuff, supplements, lots of bark, especially cassia, that's where you might run into medication interactions. Now, who really needs to be paying attention to this?
Well, the research flags several groups. The University of Mississippi study specifically calls out people with long-term conditions. Things like high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, arthritis, asthma, obesity, even HIV, AIDS, or depression.
Wow, that's quite a list. Why are these groups potentially more vulnerable?
It often comes down to the fact that managing these conditions usually involves taking medications consistently, maybe multiple medications. So any disruption in how those drugs work, how they're processed, could have a bigger ripple effect on their health.
Right, like if you need a really precise dose of something.
Exactly. Think about someone with diabetes needing stable insulin levels. If cinnamon somehow speeds up how that's cleared, it could mess with their blood sugar control.
Makes sense.
And the Times in India article also specifically adds people on blood thinners, blood pressure meds, and drugs for heart rhythm really need to be careful with cinnamon intake, particularly those concentrated forms.
Okay, that's clear. And cinnamon isn't alone here, right? The Times of India piece mentioned other common things.
Absolutely. It's good to have that broader picture. Cinnamon isn't unique in this. For instance, ginger was mentioned. It might increase bleeding risk, especially if you're taking blood thinners like warfarin.
Okay, ginger. What else?
Licorice. That one's kind of surprising. It can apparently deplete potassium, which could be risky with certain heart meds. It can also raise blood pressure and potentially interfere with a whole bunch of other things. Pain relievers, anti-inflammatories, drugs for diabetes and cholesterol, even birth control pills.
Wow, licorice is a busy one. Any others we should quickly mention?
St. John's wort is a pretty well-known one for interactions, often used for mood, but it can really clash with antidepressants, birth control, blood thinners, immunosuppressants, some heart meds, lots of things.
Right.
And turmeric, or really its active bit, curcumin. Similar to ginger, potential for increased bleeding risk if you're taking blood thinners.
So it sounds like a running theme. Natural doesn't automatically mean zero risk, especially when mixed with medications.
Precisely.
And that brings us to what feels like the most important piece of advice from all this research, doesn't it?
It really does. The message coming through loud and clear from everyone, Shabana Khan, Bill Gurley, the studies, is talk to your healthcare provider before you start taking concentrated cinnamon or, frankly, any new supplement, especially if you're already on prescription meds.
Yeah, Shabana Khan put it very directly. Our best advice is to talk to a healthcare provider before using any supplements along with the prescription medicine. Can't get much clearer than that.
No. And it's also important to remember her other point. Supplements are not meant to treat, cure, or mitigate any disease. They aren't replacements for your prescribed treatments.
Right. Think of them as potentially complementary, but definitely not substitutes. And this whole conversation feels really timely, doesn't it, given how popular cinnamon seems to be getting?
It really does. The food chemistry study mentioned that surge in interest, partly because of research looking into benefits for things like type 2 diabetes.
And that interest translates into money, too.
Yeah, the report pointed to big projected growth in the global cinnamon market. More use in pharmaceuticals, more in supplements. It just makes understanding these potential interactions even more critical right now.
Okay, so let's try and boil this down. The main message seems to be enjoying cinnamon as a spice, in your food, probably isn't a major worry for most people.
Generally, yes. That seems to be the consensus.
But if you're thinking about taking it in those concentrated forms, like supplements or extracts, that's when you really need to pause and think, especially about potential medication interactions.
That's the crucial distinction. Don't just assume it's fine because it's natural. These compounds can be potent in high doses.
And the absolute key action item, the thing you should do.
Talk to your doctor or pharmacist. If you have ongoing health issues, if you take any prescription meds, just have that conversation before adding cinnamon supplements or any supplement to your routine.
It's just about being informed and safe, right? Making sure everything you're taking is working together, not against each other.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's about being proactive with your health.
Definitely. So maybe this deep dive gives you, the listener, a little something to think about regarding your own supplement use. Perhaps it's worth having that quick chat with your doctor next time you see them, just to be sure about any potential interactions you hadn't considered. It's all about staying informed for your own well-being.